All right, welcome to another episode of Peanuts from the Plebs, end of September edition. Where are we
Hello,
starting this
welcome
week, guys?
everyone.
Special fall foliage edition.
Yes.
Supreme Court, where do you want to start?
So I did want to say two things before we actually get started. One is I wanted to say that I hope that Ron Paul is okay and that he gets better. I don't know if you guys saw that on air he had what appeared to be like a stroke, but then I think now they're saying it was a heart attack or something. But I mean, it clearly looked like he was having a stroke. So, well wishes to him. And the other thing that we haven't really touched upon is the Julian Assange trial or hearing that's going on right now. And I personally, I don't want to speak for the show, but I personally want to say that I am very ashamed of what my government is doing to this man who is apparently a very, very principled man who is being tortured right now because of those principles, because he won't give up his source. And I just want to thank him, even though he won't hear this or anything like that, but the service that he has done to the world can't even be estimated. So
right, I will second that.
And the degree of disservice that media is doing by not covering it is horrific. It's just horrific.
I mean, what's happened to journalism? This guy is a real journalist, right? Who actually investigates things and reveals the truth. He didn't slander anybody. He didn't reveal any state secrets or anything.
Right.
Nothing he's released has been proven false. He is just doing what a journalist does, and journalists have done for decades, if not longer. And he's getting the full brunt of that now because he went up against the powers that be, the powers that are threatened by this. But obviously, more power to him, and he needs to get more attention because it's not getting covered obviously not getting covered in the mainstream media.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So sorry, I just wanted to I felt like it's owed,
And even those that you would think would cover, right? Like, that whole Anna Kasparian thing where a viewer called in and said, "Are you guys going to cover Assange?" And he said, "Oh yeah, we'll probably get to that." And meanwhile, she's 100%. They're 100% on everything else. Just voter shaming for Biden, basically. So.
Right.
Yeah, it's horrific. Even people that you think are progressives are dropping the ball on this.
And then also, you just mentioned Ron Paul, Daisy, and he was interesting because, in my political evolution, I started out as my family was basically Republican, I guess, moderate Republican growing up, and I never really, I had this fascination with the Soviet Union when I grew up. Which I think I've talked about before, but then
maybe a time or two.
Well, I was probably the only 12-year-old in my neighborhood with a subscription to Soviet Life, and to the credit of my parents, they actually got me the subscription to Soviet Life for like a birthday or Christmas present, and I'm sure we were put on the watch list because of that, even though my father was a paying member of the Heritage Foundation.
Oh, geez.
It was interesting. We had interesting political conversations at our house, to say the least. But anyways, Ron Paul did run for president in 2012, I believe, and he was portrayed as a arch conservative, from Texas, he is very conservative on some issues. But the thing which distinguished him was that he was an anti-war candidate. He said we shouldn't be involved in these foreign entanglements that the founding fathers warned about, and that not only are they expensive and costing us in blood and treasure, as the phrase goes, but also that they're immoral wars. We're not improving our image abroad. We're not getting anywhere out of this. It's just benefiting arms manufacturers and certain vested interests, but not the American people as a whole. And I thought that really resonated with me when he said that. And I said, this, despite the things that I disagree with him on, I would support him just for that. So actually, I supported his campaign in 2012, even though I knew he didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of actually winning. But if you recall, during the debates in 2012, he was voted the popular winner of the Republican debates because all the Republicans were saying, except for Ron Paul, were basically repeating the neocon line, of the traditional Republican platform, and Ron Paul distinguished himself, saying that basically he went against the grain and said we have to stop the war machine, and this is something that resonated with everyone, but especially with conservatives, which to me was very significant, because it shows that there is a common ground that we can build between conservatives who want to get back to our values and the left. And that's one major issue where we can come together is the war machine. So I thought it really, he was the first person, I guess, on the right that I thought really had that got my attention as having something to say.
I do have to add really quick, and it's the same story with Tulsi, obviously, in 2020. A lot of people thought she doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell, given the suppression by the media and Hillary, but and the DNC. But if she talks on stage about anti-war movement, I was completely behind her just because of that. It was worth it. Raising people's awareness that we don't have to be doing this to enrich arms manufacturers.
And the way Tulsi is portrayed, this goes back, the way Tulsi is portrayed by different factions. She's either portrayed as being basically a Republican, which is like some of my Democratic Party friends were saying, basically she's a Republican, why are you supporting her? But some of her positions are way to the left of the mainstream Democratic Party. And then some of the Republicans are saying, well, she's too radical. She's calling for Medicare for all. She's calling for all these things. So she didn't really fit easily, or she doesn't fit now easily into a box, into a category of she's this or that. She really reached across the aisle and appealed to both to a much wider swath of people, and I thought that was something in the Ron Paul tradition. She was able to do that. So I think she definitely, Ron Paul did blaze the trail to some degree for Tulsi.
Absolutely.
All right. So.
All right. Now we've gotten through our introduction. What's our next topic here?
I did have 4 or 5 more tangents I could have gone off on there.
Yeah, I know. That's why.
Yeah.
I'm reeling it in.
We can come back to it if we have time. But let's move on. All right.
So I guess since we're already talking about politics in that sense, then I guess we can. Jim, you wanted to talk about the election?
Sure, and obviously there's a million things going on with that right now. The biggest thing, I guess, I started thinking about it with a Crystal and Sagar Rising episode where they're basically talking about that, it's been going on for months that basically Dems are kind of pushing people to vote by mail, and the whole Trump thing is, or Trump supporter thing, and Republicans is basically, this whole COVID thing it's fake. We're gonna go in and vote by, and we don't trust people with our ballots and by mail and all that kind of stuff. And the idea is that to some degree, Democrats are kind of like rolling back on that, right? Because they've got situations where, in recent mail-in voting in New York, like 20% of the ballots were thrown out. I think they're kind of coming to realize this late, because like if there's any little problem with the ballot and it's mail-in, there's obviously with that stream of custody, there's a lot more chances for something to go wrong where the ballot is somehow incorrect. Maybe more need to verify and so forth when it's not in person, and there's not the in-person verification of who the voter is. They're actually, in some cases, like kind of reversing what they're telling the voters. They're basically saying, if you can go in and vote safely, go ahead and do it at the, vote early maybe and go in and do it, or just go the election night and vote. Some of that is also probably complicated by in Pennsylvania, where there was a ruling that naked ballots will not be accepted. And I believe what that is I think you get an envelope with your thing, and if you don't use the official envelope to mail back your ballot, is that essentially what it is, Steve?
Well, it's an envelope that goes inside the other envelope that you send it back in.
Right.
So if you send it back without
that one,
just with it inside the envelope without being inside the original envelope,
right?
And then it doesn't.
Yeah, and obviously that's a confusing thing, and they estimate they could lose like 100,000 votes that could be invalidated because of that strange procedural issue. So they're obviously worried about that as well.
But I mean, the issue really, one of the issues is too that on election night, I mean, traditionally everyone's glued to their TV set, right, on election night to see what the returns are. And obviously, if a lot of people are voting by mail, then the actual results really won't be forthcoming until at least a few days after that, right? So it seems like the trend is going to be more towards Trump voters voting in person, so that you may get skewed results on election.
Well, see, that's hard to say though, right? That's hard to say, because if Trump voters are, majority of them, whatever, are planning on voting in person, he's losing elderly white voters, especially to Biden. But if all of a sudden the COVID numbers are kind of creeping up, right? Well, some of those people might get scared off of voting because of, they see on TV, they see images of long lines, and they see maybe people not wearing their masks or standing too close or something. Some of those might get scared off. So it's really hard to say which way this is going to go. And then we've got the huge wild card of the debate on Tuesday. I mean, everything I've seen is basically Biden is completely losing his cool whenever Hunter Biden is mentioned. And if I think Trump is just going to hammer on Hunter Biden completely and all that. And I just don't, who knows what's going to happen with that. Right. So
I wanted to actually see if you guys had heard about with the, because at the heart of this is election integrity, right? Like that's what is the main issue, or what's supposed to be the main issue, even though it's being politicized, right?
On both sides.
Right. That I don't know if you guys have heard that Dr. Shiva, that he's running for Senate. So now I guess
is he still running for Senate?
No, now he's running as a write-in candidate. And he recently came out with this information that he wanted to, I guess he maybe subpoenaed to see the, they're supposed to have images of the ballots. And he went to I guess wherever maybe in the State House or something. And he asked to see this data, and they didn't have the data. And apparently, so there's nothing to prove that you voted, that it was you who voted under your name, that your vote was cast the way that it was supposed to be cast, right? Because we don't have any receipts. And obviously they're not keeping the ballots. Supposedly they're supposed to keep this information for, I think, 2 years or something.
Yeah.
Well, if they're legally required, I mean, then they have to, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Or you could bring a lawsuit.
But apparently they did not. They don't have this information. And so now this is the whole big thing. So imagine this is just here in the state of Massachusetts. Yes, it is on the Senate level, but imagine what that must be like, countrywide or nationwide, where you have all these different municipalities and it's just the way that this election has been so highly politicized. That is more so why, I think it's the opinion of the show that no matter what, the results are going to be scrutinized. No one's going to believe
and there will be
the results are.
There will be massive fraud on both sides. There will be. I mean, I've already heard stuff about military ballots being found in dumpsters, and all sorts of stuff. And I do not doubt it. The frenzy on both sides, the distrust is so high that it legitimizes in people's minds taking really drastic action.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, I think the results are not just going to be scrutinized. They're going to be they're going to be questioned. They're not going to be accepted. So obviously if the votes, Trump's going to question it if he says, there was mail-in ballot fraud, that whatever, some, foreign China or something was sending in ballots, whatever. And if Trump, wins, and then I'm sure they'll be able to point to certain cases of finding ballots in dumpsters or whatever and say that the results are not. So it delegitimizes the whole election process, which basically has been, it's been illegitimate to some extent, ever since 2000 at least, right, with the Supreme Court deciding who's the president. But this whole, the process has gotten more and more questionable and less, less acceptable or accepted by the general voting population.
Yeah,
so I think
we are absolutely a banana republic when it comes to election integrity. It would be really nice if some country with better election process, like Bolivia or somebody, came in and oversaw our election to check its.
We could only wish. We could only wish.
It's just horrific.
I mean, another thing is that this whole thing with voting, like now I feel like for me, I'm gonna go in and vote in person. In that week before election day, because I don't want my paper ballot thrown out for whatever reason. And I have that luxury and privilege to be able to do that. But somebody who, like, let's say you live in Milwaukee and there's only a couple of precincts where you can, or a voting locations where you can actually vote, then you have to wait in line for 8 hours to vote. That scares me, that those people won't have the option of doing that. And therefore their vote counts for less because if they vote, they'll be by paper ballot or by mail-in ballot, and there's a better chance that vote will not be counted because of that.
Well, thanks to the Electoral College, we already have like a two-tier system
when it
comes
to
we
have a two-tier system.
But
that's true.
But the other thing that I actually wanted to see what you guys thought about this was that, like, talking about the politicization of this, I just wanted to share this with you guys because I was so as I was doing like my research for the show, right, to see what I was going to do for Legislative Week in Review, I went on GovTrack, right, because that's what I normally do. I'm just trying to see, is it this one? Yeah. So I went on GovTrack, and that's normally where I go to see what legislation is going on, what they're keeping track of, what's trending, stuff like that. And look what comes up. We're hitting pause. If he commits to a peaceful transfer as long as it's a fair election. Mark Meadows. So they go into saying how that the elections are not, it's not legal, that it's supposed to be fair, right? Like that's not, part of the like the terminology or whatever when you talk about it.
What about the 15th Amendment though?
What?
Doesn't that talk about voting? Voting. Okay, keep going, and I'll look.
Okay, so no, but this whole thing is just talking about, like it says, our mission cannot be fulfilled when faithful execution of the law is replaced with an ultimatum for something that does not and has never existed. We have hit pause. They are not going to have their site up until, I guess, after the election, because they're taking it as Trump is threatening to not have a peaceful transfer of power, that he won't leave office.
So GovTrack is basically saying we won't let you research the positions
They took down their site. They literally are saying they're taking down their site in the meantime. And it's like, you're supposed to be informing voters on
it's crazy.
Things.
Yeah. It's insane.
And that's highly politicized. It's not supposed to be a politicized, well, I mean, it talks about politics, obviously, but it's not supposed to be, I guess, partisan, right?
Right. And one of the two candidates has a 50-year congressional record to mine for past positions that completely conflict with what he's saying. Actually, they don't conflict with what he's saying these days. He's pretty open about. He's already warmongering against Venezuela. Have you guys seen that? He's talking about, of course,
replacing Maduro with Guaido.
Yeah, he's already saying, we stand for, we will back up the people of Venezuela, kind of stuff, and he's already pounding the war drums, as far as I'm concerned.
Right, which will just lose him more votes to the independence and the
Yeah, but I don't want to take away from what Daisy just observed. That's amazing. That's amazing that they would take that down.
But you can imagine
Take
if
down
they're doing
access.
it with a site like GovTrack, imagine what they're going to be doing with other sites. That's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
well, look at the New
that is
York Times.
censorship.
Look at the New York
right?
Times I mean, it's so horrifically politicized. The New York Times giving cover to the Dems, taking the Greens off the ballot. By the New York Times had that article that said, "Oh, the Greens are in league with the Republicans." It's unbelievable, and to give cover to the Dems, obviously disenfranchising voters by giving them less choice and moving it legally against, on ridiculous procedural issues and things against the Greens in battleground states. It's amazing.
Well, the Democrats, like somebody said, they put up kind of a lukewarm fight against the Republicans, but where they really come together is when they're fighting against progressives. So when they're fighting against the Green Party or whether it's MPP or whatever, they're going to be they're really top of their game.
They would rather have
that.
Trump win again than have had Bernie win. Yeah. Absolutely, or Tulsi win or something like that. Absolutely true.
But again, the whole point is that this site specifically is supposed to inform the electorate.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. That's amazing. It's amazing they would do that.
So who? Let me just be clear. Who made the decision to take this down?
Look up who
I don't know. Whoever is in charge of GovTrack.
Whoever's in charge of GovTrack,
or
can
when
influence
you go to
them.
GovTrack, when you search anything for GovTrack, let's say you search whatever bill or whatever, it'll give you the link, in the search engine, it will give you the link to GovTrack, whatever. But then when you go to GovTrack, that's what you get. It says, we have hit pause.
Weird.
I don't know, that's really crazy to me. Only specifically because the timing of this, right before this election, this supposedly this is the election of our lifetime, and that this is an existential threat and blah blah blah. We get all this hyperbolic talk about this is do or die moment essentially, but God forbid we actually inform people. It's like the whole thing of silencing people or censorship. Instead what you should do is that you should have more information out there, not less information out there, to combat whatever information. If you're saying that what he's talking about is illegal, and because that's essentially what they're saying, right? Is that we're supposed to be upholding the law. Okay, well, why don't you inform people as to why it is that this is illegal, whatever he supposedly is going to do, not take your ball and run. I don't know. That's the way I see it.
I'm going to have to go and read that full text of what because that must be a wordsmith masterpiece for them to be able to say, before this election, we must deny you information on. That's an amazing find. Well, you're just doing your usual work, looking up legislation, and you find that.
Yeah,
amazing.
It's great. I mean, like I said, this is something that I came across, so I can imagine.
Do you think anybody at MSNBC or CNN or Fox or New York Times, Washington Post or Washington Times are gonna notice that GovTrack is down?
No,
they're not. They're not.
And if anything, they would provide cover for them. They would justify why. Oh, this is them taking a stand.
I know it. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Whatever.
Oh man. Hey, kitty cat. I saw a kitty for a second there.
Yeah, he's a wild man.
So
all right, so it's
I guess we can move on to the SCOTUS story if we want. Yeah,
absolutely.
So Trump officially nominated Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court justice. And so obviously there's, people have a lot of takes on her because she is considered like this conservative judge. And that is the whole big thing now with the election, right? That, the Supreme Court is going to go to the conservatives and we're just going to, go up in flames, I guess, the moment that happens. Even though technically we've had a conservative leaning court for many decades now. It's not, you know, it wouldn't be now that we all of a sudden have a predominantly conservative court. But the thing that is, to me, the most interesting about her as a nominee is the fact that she is a very devout Catholic. And she is a part of this, I guess what they're called, charismatic Catholic groups.
No, they're called covenant communities. That's the term.
Oh, okay. Well, I just heard them called.
I mean, it's a charismatic Catholic group, but it's actually not limited to Catholics. The group.
Oh, okay. Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's like 80% Catholics, but they have you have to believe in, like, you know, Jesus or whatever, but it's like 20% are Protestants as well. So it's part of that charismatic movement. That, so there's also like, so these evangelical Christians, you know, on the Protestant side could also potentially be members of this. It's not actually a church itself; it's just a group.
Okay, and yeah, and they're called Praise.
People of Praise.
People of Praise, yeah. And you know, what is a little alarming about this group is, first of all, that they are a secretive group, right?
Right.
And they've been considered like a cult, or they've been called a cult. I guess one, because of their secretiveness, right? But also because they're supposed to like pledge loyalty, like lifetime loyalty to this group. And like what is most alarming to me is the fact that if you are part of this, for the women, you, especially married women, are to be subservient to their husband, right? Their husband is the head of the household and also the advisor of the wife, right? And as the head of the household, that person also has an advisor who is someone in this group, right? Who they advise on things like how to decorate your house, your finances. I mean, it's a very wide scope of things that they advise on, right? And you know, the fact that obviously, you know, she didn't have any say in Roe versus Wade previously, but now if she is on, if she does become the Supreme Court justice, which most likely she will, because, you know, they always put up a fight, but they end up approving them anyway. So I don't know, what do you guys think about like all this stuff?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Are you familiar with Ro Khanna's bill? He's proposing a reform of the Supreme Court, which obviously is not going to get anywhere unless Biden, or, you know, even if Biden wins. And it may require a constitutional amendment. But what Ro Khanna is proposing is an 18-year term limit on Supreme Court justices, so that after 18 years, they would be forced to step down. And he's saying that each president in their first and third year should nominate a Supreme Court justice. So if there is an opening, they already have someone nominated. And I don't know if this idea is going to go anywhere, but the Constitution doesn't really specify the number of justices on the Supreme Court. It's kind of vague in terms of how the Supreme Court is constituted. And I think it is actually time to consider a reform of the Supreme Court. It wasn't always 9 justices. It was, I think it was 5 at one point. And FDR famously tried to pack the court and tried to expand the Supreme Court. It didn't happen.
Well, I think both sides have talked about doing that various times. When it doesn't lean their way, they talk about adding 5 justices or something.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, if they push something through that's seen as you know, a violation of the Constitution, then the Supreme Court will strike it down, even if you have a supermajority of Democrats after the election, after you know, next year. So it remains to be seen. But so I thought it was interesting he's proposing that.
So I would say that I generally would agree with the idea of not leaving it up to this randomness of when a judge gets a disease or dies, then suddenly there's this opportunity for a president. I think like something that's more a more regular time frame, like we're kind of talking about, 18 years, 20 years, whatever would be. 18 years is probably to make it so if, it's I don't know, whatever.
It would be staggered, right? It would be
staggered, I guess, right. So I think that makes a lot of sense rather than waiting. Then you'd have like a regular turnover, and it probably would reflect the ideals of the voters better, because it would more reflect, there would be a more regular chance to replace judges, and you would more regularly have whoever was just elected, the Senate and so forth, and the president would have their.
I mean, it's always whoever.
I do believe that makes sense.
It's always whoever is getting screwed by the current, in the current situation is going to come up with this proposal. So,
but that's not bad. Rather than Supreme Court packing, now we need 5 liberal judges. The idea that I think that makes it fairer for both sides. I think I actually like that.
Republicans have benefited big time in the last, decade, and they're not going to necessarily support this. But if you had a Democratic supermajority and Democratic president for like 8 years, and they started appointing these, whatever, just for sake of argument, left wing justices, then all of a sudden the Republicans would support this, and the Democrats would probably be opposed to it. So it has to be a bipartisan thing where they come together on that. And I think it is, rather than just like blatantly packing the court, I think it's a more nuanced, rational proposal, to do something like that, like an 18-year term. Because people live longer now, and it's like, back in the 18th century or 19th century, they only were on the court for whatever 10 years, right? Because the life expectancy just wasn't that long in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Whereas now you try to appoint somebody who's in their 40s and they're going to be on the court for 40 years. It kind of perverts the whole intention of it.
You absolutely have a potential now for a situation where somebody is, basically has like onset of dementia, and there's this big pressure. Don't leave, because right now, if you leave, we'll have the other people will get to have a pick or whatever like that, right? And that plays both ways, of course.
Right.
I think it makes perfectly good sense to have some kind of limit like that.
Right. I mean, it's become so partisan.
Really,
go ahead.
It misses the point that the Supreme Court is not supposed to be politicized, right? And you're not supposed to have like this ideological like dogma, when you're a Supreme Court justice, right? You're supposed to uphold the law. Like that's what your job is. It's not about, oh, well, I'm a conservative and I have my beliefs, so I'm going to interject. They're not supposed to do that. That's the whole point.
I'm sorry, let me take a closer look. What planet are you on?
Yeah.
Well, they do. I mean, like, for instance, John Roberts supported the Affordable Care Act, so there's, sometimes they do go against what you'd expect them to do, right? So it's not like there's no guarantee because you appoint or get a conservative justice in there that they're going to vote a certain way on issues.
Or even you don't even have to go that far back. You can go to Neil Gorsuch recently. He ruled for native tribes, for the land in Oklahoma. That ruling was he was the one who wrote the ruling on that. So right. I mean, and it wasn't expected that he would go that way, but he did. And obviously, we know, Neil Gorsuch.
The rhetoric and
the
rhetoric and the actions of like every politician in our government shows that they don't believe that it's a non-political, simply calling balls and strikes position. So there's no reason that we as voters, should have faith that that's how it works.
I was just disappointed that, of Mitch McConnell being so disingenuous. Like in 2016, I mean, saying that let the American people decide and wait until after the election. I mean, why not just come out and say, we have the power to block this. We support a conservative justice. We're going to do this. That would have been much more. I would have respected that a lot more if they were just honest about it. And now they could say, well, we can just vote instead of having to now to say,
he's a politician.
Yeah,
honesty, politician.
I know, but like I mean, every politician isn't the same. I don't put Tulsi and Mitch McConnell in the same, you know, category. I think there's some politicians who are more honest than others. Some of us are more equal than others, whatever. But maybe it sounds kind of Orwellian. But I think there is something to be said for. I just really disgusted with his
but when you add
4 years ago.
When you add all the again the distrust between the two sides and the peer pressure to pile on the other side on the Supreme Court thing, I mean, you're just going to have people that are usually complete liars are just going to be even shock themselves in their ability to twist facts.
Now, I assume she's a Federalist Society member too, because all the judges that have been appointed by McConnell, they're basically all the Federalist Society puts these lists forward and they get appointed, and they basically subscribe to these conservative principles. And I would assume she's on that. I don't want to say that for a fact. I know she's spoken before the Federalist Society. I don't know if she actually is a member of it, but I wouldn't be at all surprised.
I think the three things that I've seen that she is like against, so she's anti-abortion. She is against the death penalty, which I don't hold against her, but apparently some people do. And she's like anti-immigration. So they're going to push the whole DACA thing.
Is that expressed, those views? Like I went looking for her previous rulings on like abortion, and the thing I found was that she ruled I think she actually wrote like a the unanimous judgment that was basically that kids under 18 couldn't get abortions without their parents being notified, and this is one of the things that people on the left are pointing to, like, oh, she's horrific, she's going to turn over Roe v. Wade. No, that's not quite turning over all rights to abortion kind of thing.
Although I would expect her to vote in favor of overturning Roe v. Wade. I mean, that's what they want, right? I would expect that.
I think ultimately what it comes down to is that she has personally come out and said that she is staunchly anti-abortion, right? And when she was in a hearing, Dianne Feinstein questioned her and, said, questioned like the fact that she's so dogmatic about her beliefs. And she even said, she was like, for this position, I wouldn't have a chance to speak on Roe versus Wade. And so it's like, okay, but now you will technically.
Right, but so you're saying
she is going to be approved no matter what.
But you're saying like, so now you were talking before the way judges should act, I guess. You're like, so you wouldn't trust her to like call balls and strikes and say, this is a precedent, and therefore I don't have any overwhelming reason to overturn it. I know she's an originalist, so she might bring in that thinking that, well, the founding fathers didn't think that, I don't know,
I don't know. I think that to a certain extent, obviously the left is going to attack her in every which way. They're going to take everything and turn it into a much bigger deal than what it really is. And like an example of that is like the whole thing with, comparing the group that she is a part of to a cult. The big thing was the whole handmaiden thing, right? The fact that the advisor for the male is called the head, and the advisor for the female or for the single female, because obviously if you're married, your husband is your advisor. Is a handmaiden, and they were saying
was a handmaid. They changed the terminology.
And that Margaret Atwood supposedly, that she may have used this information.
Newsweek basically originally put out that article. Everyone sucked it up, and Newsweek contradicted that. Basically, kind of.
Well, technically, she did an interview with Politico saying that she's not sure. Whether it was because it's supposed to be people of praise, right?
Yeah,
and people of hope is the other group that supposedly that's the group that she actually based the book on, The Handmaid's Tale. But she says that she's not sure because the notes that she has are like locked away somewhere, and because of this pandemic, she's not able to access her notes. So she personally has been asked about this and has said that she is not sure which group it is that she based this book off of. But either way, you know, the fact that obviously the left is going to take something like this and run with it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple comments around this whole thing. To me, like, if you look at, I don't know, first of all, I don't know. Maybe this is a crazy cult, but you know, John F. Kennedy was treated the same way, right? He's gonna be the handmaiden for the Pope, right? The Catholic, you know, and so if you read the Bible and if you just go ahead and you read the Bible about what it says in there, you can find 1,000 reasons to never elect any Catholic because it says the woman has to be, you know, I find it kind of ridiculous that somebody that's, you know, makes decisions that affects millions of people, men and women, every day, is, you know, she has like a micro, you know, an earpiece, and has her husband calling her in, telling her what to do all the time. It seems like a horrific slander of a woman that should be seen as an inspiring, strong woman. Right.
Well, she's obviously
to one degree. And I want to bring up one more thing real quick. I'll slide this in there. The other thing is, I think it's really dumb of the Democrats to attack her on Catholicism. 50% of Latinos are Catholics in the U.S. And right now, that is Trump's edge. Yeah. So I don't know, is he being crazy like a fox again, or is it dumb? I think that, again, the Democrats are being incredibly stupid at exactly the wrong time.
Right. Yeah, she's actually I should mention she's a product of I think she's from South Bend, or grew up in South Bend, Indiana, which is the home of University of Notre Dame, with a very, very conservative Catholic school.
Mike Pence was the governor of Indiana, I think, right? He's from Indiana.
Okay.
Yeah, he's from Indiana as well, and it's actually, South Bend is considered a liberal enclave within the state of Indiana, but it's actually, the university is very conservative. I have a family member who actually is the head of the department there, and he says it's more conservative than Boston College in terms of like a Catholic school, and she's part of this. And I did read the Wikipedia article about People of Praise, which is actually very, it's not mentioned any controversy or anything. So it's probably, my guess is it written by somebody from People of Praise. And one of the things they mention is that they do service in inner cities. And the inner cities, to me, is always a euphemism for brown and black skinned people. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's like, this is a rich suburban organization that does, you know, outreach, like,
diversity outreach, right?
Diversity outreach, right? But she's very conservative. She's very, very privileged. Obviously, very smart. I mean, she graduated summa cum laude from.
And they adopted a Haitian girl as well.
Yeah, they have 5 children, biological children, and 2 adopted girls from Haiti. Yeah. So she's obviously living her beliefs. She's not just talking; she's actually walking the walk. But I think this is all about Roe v. Wade. Personally, this appointment, I think it's pandering to the Hispanic population for the election, but in a longer term, Republicans
so.
And the evangelicals.
Well, yeah.
Well, no, it's not evangelical. It's actually
evangelicals. They already have.
But he obviously needs to continue to pander to that base always.
Well, you're right, because for you're right. That's right. As well as now also pulling in Catholics, as you're saying, Steve, for Hispanics in a lot of cases, right? Yeah. I mean, personally, the idea of anyone being religious and judging law scares me anyway. But but that's where we're still there. You know,
they see themselves as part of the body of Christ. So ultimately, that the real law is above the Constitution. It's the biblical law, or whatever, the law of God or whatever. And that's nothing new, really. But that's where she's coming from. And obviously, she's a very intelligent person. I mean, she's not like a Harriet Miers, right? Like, remember George W. appointed basically as secretary or something, and she. Even Republicans couldn't get behind her, but she's obviously, this person is very, qualified as far as legal, academic background and experience and everything. She obviously is probably going to vote against abortion, right? I mean, it seems pretty clear that that's where it's going to go. But I just want to mention too, like, in a historical perspective, in 1856, there was a Dred Scott decision, and I think Chief Justice was Roger Taney, who was out and out racist figure, and he basically said that black people aren't humans and they don't deserve. They could be property. And then the Civil War ensued 4 years later. So just because you have a conservative, and I'm not comparing her to Roger Taney, I think she's a lot more sophisticated and smart, but just saying that the Supreme Court isn't the end all and be all and end all of everything. I think somebody's just exaggerated the power of the Supreme Court.
It's being used as a political tool, like everything else right now,
Right. I mean, the question is,
again, it's not supposed to be.
How would she rule on Citizens United? That's the question. Like, would she? To me, that's really important. Would she say this is unfair because I believe in the sanctity of life or whatever? So I believe in the sanctity of one man, one vote, and one person, one vote.
Are you saying that we should scrutinize her on her rulings instead of like her personal life, like what they did to Kavanaugh?
Well, I don't know.
That's what I tried. Like I said, that's what I tried to do.
Any of his rulings?
I tried to actually say, I was looking at Twitter, I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I went to see, look up her actual rulings on abortion and on some corporations things. She ruled in favor of Grubhub because people are like, oh, she's a corporate tool. But it's like the Grubhub workers were trying to somehow get a ruling in their favor saying that they engage in interstate commerce. And I'm like, which obviously predominantly they wouldn't, right? I mean, how many people are coming? So I don't know. So in reading, if you we advise our watchers, whoever's out there, if there's anybody, to go look up her rulings and use that as a judgment. And you could read them and you can go either way as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Jim, it's a moot point anyways, because we don't have a vote in this, right? It's going to happen no matter what.
Oh, and speaking of votes, last time when she went for the 7th Court of Appeals, it was, it went down party lines except for 3 Democrats, including Tim Kaine, voted in favor of her.
I mean, they always vote, and they have been fast tracking all of Trump's judges this whole time.
Yes.
So it's just, this is all for show. It's all BS,
Yeah.
It's all just to get all those people with Trump derangement syndrome, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, that was the whole thing. It was like, oh my God, the Supreme Court, now we all definitely have to go and vote.
You have to send money into the DNC. You have to send money to the DCCC because RGB
died. Millions of dollars.
Yeah.
It's a fundraising opportunity for them.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's it.
And that's what Trump is. So that's why I'm not sure. I still don't know whether or not, with Biden going up against Trump in this debate on Tuesday, if that happens, Pelosi is still saying he shouldn't do it. I don't know. I don't know if they really want Biden to win or not.
Do you want to talk about
because of course she doesn't want to debate Shahid Buttar, so.
You want to talk?
That's right.
She can't tell somebody to go and debate if she's not willing to do it herself.
That's right.
Do you want to talk briefly about the Democratic platform? I did look at it today. Basically, their platform is extremely vague. They said a couple of things, like they want a $15 minimum wage. They want a new social and economic contract with the American people, whatever that means. They want to provide access, and the key term here is access, right? They're not guaranteeing anything. They're just saying providing access to affordable, high-quality childcare on a sliding scale. Well, that all sounds great, but how are you going to do it? And then it's providing access to high quality health insurance, not even healthcare, just access to high quality health insurance. They want a tax credit for first time home buyers of $15,000. So that really doesn't do a lot for a lot of people who don't have, aren't in the market to buy a house, right? Or can't take whatever. And they want to reverse the Trump tax cuts, but there's no talk about reversing the Bush tax cuts, which Obama made permanent. So,
well, that's because he's been rehabilitated already, duh.
Right. And they want to strengthen Dodd-Frank. Wow. But what's curious, they did say they want a modernized version of Glass-Steagall. So Glass-Steagall was famously or infamously axed by Bill Clinton. in the 90s, and
Biden,
now they're
and
talking
Biden
about a
voted for that.
modernized version of Glass-Steagall, which basically means that, you know, banks and investment houses are kept separate, right? So I thought that was kind of interesting that that made its way into the platform. But the
Well, again,
question,
they can put in the platform a modernized version of Glass-Steagall, and that can mean anything, right?
it can mean anything.
That can mean anything, and it sounds good, but you know,
Right.
they can do nothing at all and call and
notoriously they don't follow the platform anyways.
Right.
Which really makes me wonder, like, why don't the Democrats just say we're for Medicare for all or single payer health care and then just not do it, because at least they get elected. But it's that easy, because Trump doesn't mind, you know, lying to people just to get elected. So why don't the Democrats just kind of say, well, we're going to look into Medicare for all and get support for it and get the votes to win? But I think, Jim, you're right, you know, that they just care about raising money, and it's not really about who wins. And there's no other explanation.
Speaking about platforms and you know, what we can actually do for the American people, the Moving for People's Party will be having a rebuttal or commentary after the debate on Tuesday, so you'll be able to find that on Facebook. Yeah, I advise people to watch. It'd be probably really interesting to put things in context about what is not talked about probably during the debate that should be talked about. That's my guess.
Okay, I do have one interesting email I received. I have to share the screen here. Speaking of the Democrats not wanting to win, this is an actual, I don't know if I can make this bigger. This is actually a screenshot from a video I received from the Kamala Harris, whatever, the Biden Victory Fund. I mean, is this going to make you vote for Democrats? Just make a donation of any amount right now.
So now Kamala Harris, right? She's the one that received 0 delegates of the 7 that received delegates, right? Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so I just wanted for my for what it's worth. I just thought that was, and that's obviously an unflattering screenshot from a video, but the rest of the video isn't much better. And I just thought, like,
so you're saying are they really trying to lose?
Yeah, because like I mean, I'm just saying, like, this is not how you win votes. You know, and it's all about sending in money, and we're going to match it, you know, 400%, because obviously they have these big donors. But it's not. There's nothing about the issues.
I did tweet out on Twitter. I put out a tweet about, like, has anybody seen getting completely sick of Stacey Abrams popping up on their YouTube asking for money for the Senate Democrats, and like a million people yeah, it's like all the time.
Well, she's on the Center for American Progress, right? It's like she's just so, you know, traditional mainstream Democrat. It's not funny.
I think we're talking California.
Cool. Yeah.
In California.
Yeah. So I had sent you guys that that article, right, about how apparently California is like using their streets as collateral, right? So I was able to. I know that Steve wasn't satisfied with the source.
Well, I just questioned it.
I know it looked a little sketchy, right, with that cross going around.
Right. The revolving cross.
Yeah. But as you can see, this is from Forbes. Okay. So apparently this story originated from this thing called buyerbond.com, which I guess it's their, like, this economic newspaper or paper or whatever. But anyway, so this is from Forbes, and it says, forget pension obligation bonds. 2 cities are, no joke, leasing their seats to fund pensions. It says, it sounds preposterous, and the headline of a recent article here at Forbes by Marilyn Cohen is certainly eye-catching. The lunacy of using city streets to collateralize new municipal bond deals. And these aren't just any municipal bond deals. 2 cities in California are issuing bond deals or bonds with their own city streets as collateral to pay down their unfunded pension liabilities. So it says, in West Covina, the city council voted to do so on July 7th, as reported at the San Gabriel Valley Tribune. The city, a suburb of Los Angeles with a population of 100,000, a median household income of $71,200, and nearly $200 million in pension liabilities, is using the proceeds of a $205 million in debt to pay off its own debts to CalPERS, which CalPERS is the pension group for California. Likewise, according to the East Bay Times, the city of Torrance, also in suburban Los Angeles, which Los Angeles has just been getting beat up, man. They have really been, you know, from the, obviously like the fires over there, and also from the pandemic, and just been shutting down, and just everything. They've really gotten it. And people leaving, because apparently everyone is leaving California, which really hurts. That's one of the main reasons why this is a big deal, is because they're losing all of these funds from taxes that they collect from, you know, wealthier people, and they still have pensions that they have to pay out. So it says also in suburban Los Angeles, population 150,000, median household income 80,900, pension debt $500 million, will issue $350 million in bonds.
I mean, this, to your last point, Daisy, this is just the kind of move that could send them into like a financial death spiral, right? Because people now are like, so if they don't pay off these bonds correctly, my street is going to be owned by another by somebody else, and they'll be able to what? You know, make me pay a toll?
It explains further down there on the page that it's not the same as a traditional, you know, collateral.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is obviously what the initial reaction would be. Like, that was my initial reaction, was that would be like your streets would now be like sponsored by Capital One, or you know, like something like that. But it does say, now it turns out they're not turning their streets into toll roads, because that was also the thing, is that they were worried that if they weren't able to pay off these roads, that they would just end up putting, you know, these companies or these banks, they would end up putting a toll in order to pay off these funds.
You know, that's not unheard of. I was in Italy in the 70s, and the highways there were I believe they're owned by oil companies, and so you pay your toll to the oil company.
Crazy.
So it's not unprecedented.
Yeah. Although I would not want that.
No, I'm just saying that's not the first time.
And says, or giving bond buyers the ability to foreclose or take control either now or in the future. So that is the good thing. And then it goes into talking about like the different types of lease revenue bonds, versus like government bonds versus revenue bonds. Like, so it's just a different way of accumulating those resources, essentially, without having to give up control of these streets. And also, what they mentioned down here is that the general obligation bonds require voter approval. So this is also another way for them to get around it.
What happens if the whole thing goes south? That's because I'm always like looking on the you know, glasses half full, and that if it all fails and they don't have enough money to pay the pensions, and they can't pay the money back, what happens? I mean, obviously they can't foreclose on the roads, but what happens?
Right. I mean, I don't know. This is something that they're trying out new. They haven't done this before, but now and California, they have, you know, they supposedly they've been mismanaging their funds for a very long time. You know, we had talked about this previously, the fact that they're the 5th largest economy in the world, and they're having to use their streets as collateral. That's pretty significant. That there is some sort of disparity there. And when it comes to, you know, federal funding, you know, this really does highlight the fact that, you know, you know, states cannot create their own money. And that is when it comes to all of these different programs that we want to implement, how people say that maybe we should try them at the state level and then we can try them at a national level. The problem is that, and that's why, like, let's say Medicare for All, for instance, you know, Bernie Sanders wasn't able to pass it in his own state of Vermont. Why? Because of the fact that they cannot, like, the burden that you would put for taxes on the state, on the citizens for the state specifically, is exorbitant, versus, you know, if you dole that out, you know, throughout the whole nation, obviously it's an easier burden to carry tax wise, you know. And again, the fact that the federal government is who creates money through its spending. right? And you know, that was a big point of contention with these stimulus bills, right, between the Republicans and the Democrats, because Trump and the Republicans are saying we don't want to just bail out essentially these states, because really what they're using it for is to pay off these pensions, right? And not for essentially emergency relief, which is what the bills are supposed to be for.
And again, that translated into the whole COVID response, where I think a lot of the resistance on the part of Republicans can be chalked up to, well, these Democrats run states just want the money to pay off their pensions because they've been mismanaging for so long, right? So it just trickles down to being a real problem in so many ways. And I really do worry that something like this could be the straw that broke the camel's back like that, and really send them in. Because if I was living there and I read an article like that and they were talking about, streets that I knew about in my area, I'd be leaving. Mm-hmm. I'd be like, okay, that's it. Things are going downhill fast, Mm-hmm.
Also, famously, California passed this Proposition 13 in 1978 that resulted in a constitutional amendment to the California Constitution, which basically said that it was a property tax revolt, and basically said that property taxes cannot be more than 1% of the value of the property. So, like, if you have a $500,000 house, your taxes can't be more than $5,000 annually, right? So this also limited, especially in California's case, it limited their ability to tax. So they could do that. They could do the maximum, but for a lot of these municipalities, it's not enough to run things.
Yeah.
So 1%. That's pretty severe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you have, I don't know if it actually passed or if this was something that California was suggesting, that they wanted to pass this like tax on people leaving the state. Like, even if you leave the state, you still have to pay. If you make over a certain amount, you still have to pay taxes in the state of California. And that was made a big deal because obviously Joe Rogan, he recently left. He's one of the people that flew from California, and he moved over to Texas because Texas doesn't have state taxes.
No income tax.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
That kind of stuff.
With this.
That kind of stuff can just accelerate the.
And just think about the fact that California has lost a shit ton of revenue, from tourism. Obviously, the fact that the majority of their businesses, like, they've actually had a much tighter lockdown. I have a friend of mine who she is in San Francisco, and she was telling me about how they're going back on lockdown. Like, they've just been on constant lockdown for months now.
Wow.
And obviously, like, she is lucky enough that she can work from home, but not everyone is in that situation. And she's actually saying that she knows a lot of people because she works in kind of the tech sector, and she was saying that a lot of people have left California from the tech sector. That's a lot of money that is leaving, and especially with like these fires that are going on, that they have to inject a lot more revenue, into paying for these things. And obviously that's why they have prison labor.
Oh yeah. And they just talk about it. To me that stuff, like, you think of like China doing, like, having like prison slave labor. They just talk about, like, got Gavin Newsom just like, oh yeah, we're gonna have more prisoners taking care of this section of it. It's like, I can't believe it.
What? But now at least the people, the prisoners, when they get out, they're trying to pass this legislation that they'll at least be able to get a job as a firefighter afterwards, or they may be able to, because the whole thing was that I guess they were fighting to be EMTs, like to get that certification, and they were barred from getting that certification even after they served their time. And with these people that are fighting these fires, obviously the whole thing of that they're getting paid like $2, $3.
Oh yeah.
Which is better than, I guess, 10 cents compared to
Well,
other
Hey,
I mean,
well, if we can get
yeah,
the
but with the inflated, yeah, I mean, you've heard about the inflated prices they charge them for making phone calls and stuff like that. You're literally talking about people risking their lives in these infernos and then coming back and they can make a 10-minute call to their mother because they just did that. I mean, that's what's going on, you know. And then never mind the stuff about Kamala Harris having kept them in prison longer than they really should have been in order to continue to fight fires, you know, and all that stuff. Or people for, you know, cannabis related offenses and stuff like that. Oh my Lord.
Yeah. So California is in a heap of trouble, and it looks like it's only going to get worse. We already know that the economy it is just getting worse for people.
That big earthquake's going to happen. It's going to float out in the sea, and it'll have more coast, and it'll be a more of a tourist destination, and they'll come back.
It'll be its own island, right?
Yeah.
So then I guess we'll just do the legislative week in review. So you guys remember that I just really wanted to talk about how we have a looming government shutdown coming October 1st, right? And it talks about how here's how likely a government shutdown is with no deal reached Friday. This is from heavy.com. And it says, after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and the White House negotiated an agreement extending the government shutdown deadline to September 30th, the prospect of another shutdown looms large as the Washington Post reported a potential deal fell apart Friday, September 18th. And even though this is from updated from the 19th. Sorry, I thought that this was a little bit more up to date. So it says Vice President Mike Pence announced in early September that the White House had reached a deal called a stopgate measure to temporarily avoid a government shutdown. However, disagreements over spending for farmers and child nutrition have delayed an agreement that the House Democrats wanted to have done by Friday, the Post reported. The delay comes during the two parties' continued stalemate over coronavirus relief spending as airlines and other industries continue to struggle to stay afloat. The stopgate measure that is being bargained over would extend government funding from now until December 11th, because it just has to get past the election. Failing to negotiate a deal could lead to a government shutdown with non-essential government functions being unavailable for the public. And then it kind of goes into, you know, some stuff about the trade deal with the farmers and all that. According to the Washington Post, Pelosi, displeased with the addition, agreed in a call with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin to include the farm funding if $2 billion of the bill was also used for child nutrition spending. Then she called back and reneged on the deal. They ended up passing a bill in the House just this week. And it does include like the $2 billion for child nutrition, and it also includes in there the farming thing, because that was the Republicans' contention, was that they wanted the farming funding to go in there, and obviously for Nancy Pelosi it was the whole child thing, which I feel like, again, they always use, it's almost like they use us as these pawns, these political pawns constantly, you know, to where it's like, you see, we can't come to this deal because we're just trying to get you the better bargain, you know, like when it's like, ultimately, if you guys were adults about the situation, you could act, and you were actually acting in the best interest of the people, you would find a way to put your politics to the side, put aside the fact that you don't want Trump to win, or that you know, or that you want Biden to win, whatever, and put that to the side and work for the people, then you would be able to compromise and come up with something, and they obviously haven't been able to do that. And so, I mean, again, this doesn't really give much more information than, you know, than what we are just going over. But again, the House, they have approved the bill. Now it went to the Senate, which we've already talked about how the Republicans in the Senate, they do not want to have, you know, exorbitant spending because they're the deficit hawks, right? But that has been with the coronavirus stimulus talks, right? So they have agreed, all parties have agreed that they are going to treat the bill separately, right? But then now also the contention is that the airlines have given a deadline to the Fed, saying that if they, or to Congress, that if they don't pass a stimulus or something by October 1st, they're going to have to lay off a bunch of workers, thousands of workers. And so imagine they haven't been able to, how many bills have we gone through now? Or, you know, we have the HEROES Act, we have the CARES Act, we have all these different acts, right, that have been, you know, passed, but they don't go anywhere. And then now we have this issue of a government shutdown, which supposedly no party wants that. No, the Republicans don't want that, and the Democrats don't want that.
As you said, that,
right?
so you're going to start like laying off federal employees now and adding that burden to yeah, it's pretty crazy, as well as the fact that, I mean, most of the restaurants that, you know, that, well, I went out last night to a restaurant basically because it feels fairly safe to be outdoors dining. People are not going to want to go indoors dining, and we've got the fall coming, so we're going to have restaurants are going to definitely going to be dropping off. Hopefully they can make it up with takeout, you know, but yeah, just horrific all around.
But getting back to the shutdown, what about I've heard the argument that Nancy Pelosi could have threatened the Republicans' chance to confirm Trump's appointee to the Supreme Court, or not nominee for the Supreme Court, if she shut down the government. Have you heard anything about that?
I have heard about that, and the response to that was that they would call to remove her as the Speaker of the House if she does do that.
Who would call to remove her? Because they wouldn't have the power to do that, right? Unless it's the Democrats.
I want to say, oh, you're saying that in the House they would have to.
Well, I mean, the Senate votes to confirm.
I thought it was the Senate.
But if they can shut down,
the Senate is who's saying that they would.
But if they shut down the government, that's the whole thing. That they could, if Nancy Pelosi forced the government shutdown, then that would delay the possibility of a vote in the Senate, correct? Or not? I mean, I don't know how that works. But but she basically responded saying she is not interested in a government shutdown.
Yeah, they're all saying that they're not interested in a government shutdown, but it's just like the whole thing with the stimulus check. They have been saying that they understand, and the Fed has come out and said how many times that we need a stimulus check, all this kind of stuff, and they have been just passing the buck. And I've said that they were just buying their time, right? Until, because that's what they're just trying to see who's going to win in November. Because that's ultimately what it comes down to. You know, it's like, okay, well, if Trump wins, then things continue on, and most likely what's going to happen is immediately the Democrats in the House are going to go and try to do impeachment again, you know, or who knows what else, right?
Then they'll all have two pens.
What do you mean?
Souvenir pens. Remember Nancy souvenir pens? Then they'll have two souvenir pens.
well, she was quoted as saying even before that they have a lot of things in their arsenal that they are willing to impeach him over.
Wow. Okay.
And now she came out with the whole thing with the quiver. She has.
Oh, yeah. And you know, none of them have anything to do with abusing war powers in any way, right? Because they want to be able to save those for themselves too.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have people saying that if Trump if there is like no actual transition of power, if by January 21st they can't decide who really was the winner, that Nancy Pelosi would be the president, and then that's the whole thing of you know. That she's just doing this because she wants to be. I mean, again, everything is so politicized, and in the meantime, they are not doing their job. Like, this is all a charade in order for them to not have to do what they were sent to Washington, D.C. to do.
Yeah, it's too. I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is really ignorant for 1,000 different ways, but it feels to me as a voter like if they can't decide on budgets, like it ought to automatically like 90% of every department's budget for last year should just get reinstated or something like that. You know, some kind of automatic thing, so departments aren't just left completely high and dry, that, you know, they automatically get, like, you know, a month's worth of funding or something like that based on last year's funding to tide them over until things are done or something. And that should be automatic to take it out of the hands of these clowns that can't even talk to each other and do the work for the people, you know.
But they don't care because they still continue to get paid.
They don't care because they get paid.
Like,
right.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know,
And the crazier
they have no
things
sense of urgency.
they can scream Trump, 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 and they can scream Pelosi, 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 and they can continue to fundraise off it. It's golden times for them sometimes. The worst times for us can be the best times for them.
Yep.
Speaking of funding, what do you make of, so Tulsi now has a Tulsi Aloha P.A.C.
Oh,
And
I did see that.
I'm
I don't
looking
know
at-
how I feel about that, because
I know.
it's essentially, it's just so that she can, you know, move her money around. And that to me is like,
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. That is
Yeah.
the game, right? But it's not what we want.
Yeah,
from her,
I know.
right?
I'm really on the fence about. I think she would do so much better with my money than anybody else. Like, you know, many other people. But but giving money to a PAC to behind the scenes work the Washington levers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What I was saying
Yeah.
is,
But
I want us to go on the record now. It's September 27th, right? So we have how many weeks of the election? Like 5 weeks. For each of us, who do you predict is going to win? Is it going to be Biden? Is it going to be Trump? Or is it going to be undecided?
We should talk on Wednesday after the debate, because that could go a million different ways.
Well,
if I had to make a decision right now, I would say Trump's winning. I would say at this point. But if you want to talk like a percentage of people,
no, who's going to win?
Not vote is going to win. People not casting their vote is going to be. That's going to be.
They're going to lose. You mean?
They're going to lose. Yeah, that's going to be 90 million.
I think it's going to be undecided, personally. I think it'll be a repeat of 2000 where it goes into like December and we have no idea who won.
Oh, I think that's going to happen. Yeah, because for reasons that you were saying, the Dems can obviously just tie this up in the courts if it's looking Trump's ways, and if it's looking Dem ways, Trump could tie it up in the courts. But the Dems would have the motivation that it would go to Pelosi, right?
I guess
so. That's, so that they definitely could be thinking about that. No doubt about it. Same as Kim Iverson.
So I'm torn, right? A big part of me really feels like it's like election night. It's going to be undecided. We're not going to have the results, obviously. But I think ultimately, Trump is going to win. But I obviously think that there's going to be a massive hoopla.
It's going to be
not going to be a regular election. Like, oh, okay, you're going to have a concession. No.
It's going to be long and messy, and it's going to divide people even further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why people are saying that they're going to use this as an excuse to just like pop something off. Whatever the hell is going to happen, this is going to be that whatever sets it off.
Steve, you think the same thing? Ultimately,
I think we kind of have a consensus on that. There's so much the system has been discredited so much, the election system, and there's so much fraud and everything. And just I don't think it's going to be. No one's going to accept the results. Put it that way. It's not going to be a clear-cut acceptance of the results on even a week after election night.
So after this, do you think is Portland's going to be still standing? I mean, if things are like this now,
I'm worried more about New York, Chicago, DC.
Yeah.
I see it spreading around.
But, All right. On that happy note.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, folks.
All right. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Peace out.